What is poppin', people? You got Jay Bear here, bringing you all Shuckle Premier League week number 5, and this is, I guess, the results for week 4, and then the battles for week 5 preview. But with all of that being said, thank you all for the support on the previous. We are halfway through the regular season, so certainly a lot more weeks to come, and yeah, if you've have been enjoying, I ask that you please subscribe. Not a lot of the watch time comes from subscribers. It'd mean the world if you did. We're almost at 1100, which is pretty awesome. And leave a like and definitely leave a comment. We're halfway through the season. I want you all to let me know how your seasons have been going as a viewer. How have your pick'ems been doing? And how have you enjoyed? Who's been the favorite coach for you to watch? Who's been a standout? Who's been surprising? But yeah, I guess we can get into the results in 3, 2, 1. Here are our results. First up, we saw Shuckle King versus Seabad, and this was a battle of a 3-0 versus an 0-3 team. And Seabad was actually able to get his first win by handing Shuckle King his first loss. And it was a great set, a lot of back and forth. Ultimately, Seabad's Latios was really clutch. A lot of speed came in to play this week. And Urshifu was able to do some stuff, but between the combination of a lot of Seabad's team, the move slots on it were a bit wonky, and that helped out as well. But ultimately, Latios was the driving piece there. Up next, we saw Pokémon versus Shroom Raver, another 0-3 versus 3-0 matchup, but this time Pokémon wins 2-0 to move on to that 4-0 record. That's probably the magic number Pokémon will probably be in playoffs. And Shroom, he was kind of dealt a tough hand coming in 0-3, and the transactions that he made the team look pretty promising, but ultimately Bulk Up Annihilate, just kind of did its thing. I thought that would be one of Joey's main modes, screens Bulk Up Annihilate, and he relied on it this week, and it did not disappoint. It went absolutely nuclear, just taking some well-timed turns to bulk up and then just killing all of Shroom's team. Up next, we saw Nexus versus Mountay, another undefeated team, this time losing to Nexus 2-1. Mountay had some interesting prep, especially that game 2 with that Archaludon was absolutely insane. That thing was outputting so much damage with the Terra Stellar Steel Beam next to the Berserker Steely Spirit support, but Nexus was able to win in the other 2 games with on the back of his strong redirection and especially that Rocky Helmet Clefable game 1, just knocking out Mousehole before it could knock it out was quite nice for Nexus, and ultimately that was able to seal him that spot, moving on to 2-2 neutral record. And we had another 3-0 versus 0-3 matchup. This time we saw Amel versus Tone. No, sorry, this one was not 3-0. This was 2-1 versus 1-2. And now Tone moves to 1-3. Amel moves to 3-1. Amel on the back of Big Man Blastoise. He was just able to click a lot of water spouts, some Shell Smash boosted, some Helping Hand boosted, some Terra Water boosted. He was doing all of the things with that Shell Smash Blastoise next to some Indeedee support and other support pieces throughout that matchup. Ursaring doing its best as well. Tone, credit to him, he was able to get one game off of Amel, but ultimately it was the Blastoise show. And then we saw Owen versus Viz, and Viz looked like he knew what he was doing out there, especially game 2 with the Araquanid prep. Unfortunate for Owen, he was just kind of flustered by the Terra Electric Araquanid damage. I wasn't quite able to calculate properly in that second game, but game 1 Viz made some great plays like Psychic Terrain and protecting Dragapult so that it would be protected from a Sucker Punch the next turn after it was brought down to its Focus Sash. A lot of cool prep was shown off on Viz's side. Up next, we saw Joe versus Moxie, one of the latest minute. They actually played on that Sunday that they uploaded, which was crazy. And we saw Joe take down Moxie. Moxie had a great game 1, not really with the game plan that he was intending, but he was able to capitalize on his Pecharunt just being so broken. I really enjoyed Pecharunt. Having the chance to use it in Showdown right now, it has been a blast. Obviously, that's singles, but kind of got to show the VGC player why Pecharunt is great. But Joe was able to claw back in the next 2 games on the back of his very standard balanced core. The Rillaboom, Gouging Fire, Sneasler, and actually able to get past Moxie's Psych Up Cheese. Perhaps he was channeling his inner Mucksmeargle a little bit too hard. Up next, we saw Keeley versus James, and this was another great set. Keeley able to capitalize game one, just putting out too much damage for James to handle and making some great reads. But then game two, James was able to combine his Tatsugiri and Dondozo, and that ultimately was able to happen at a point where it would have been too late for Keeley to really capitalize and beat that combination. And then game three, he made the bold call of leaving Dondozo at home and made an incredible turn one read, thunderbolting a Terra Water Hisuian Arcanine with the choice Specs Goldango. But after that, things did not turn out the best. It was a bit risky because he benched the Dondozo, but he was able to pivot around in the end game. And shout out Keeley Skiploom, that really won her that first game. And those sleep powders were really, really annoying for James. You could tell he was flustered. Up next, we saw Clover versus Liv, and after benching Clover's Ursaluna, he brought it back this week with a vengeance. That mon went absolutely nuclear. It was a great 3-game set. Clover made some great adaptations in the second and third games, really on the back of that Terra Fairy Ursaluna, just kind of outputting heinous levels of damage. Raging Bolt was able to do some great work, as was the Volcanion, but ultimately the Ursaluna as well as Murkrow actually was a little bit of an unlikely support piece with the Snarl. I mean, like, likely support piece, but the Snarl support was actually incredible. And forced Liv into a lot of awkward Thunderclap turns just because she couldn't afford to get snarled by the Murkrow. So even though there were some very telegraphed sunny days and some very telegraphed tailwinds from that Murkrow, if it had went for Snarl, Liv would have been in such a bad spot that she was forced to Thunderclap it. Up next, we saw Vatsa versus Necra, and this was kind of a sad game for Necra. I would feel so demoralized. She took a great game one, just being able to really blitz Vatsa's team. But then, you know, you push That's buttons the wrong way, and all of a sudden you ended up on the wrong end of a substitute, minimize, heat wave it, Chandelure. And yeah, there's not really much to say about that. That was just kind of a crazy course of events that Chandelure got lucky enough. Unlucky, then lucky. Lucky with the burn on the Suicune, able to get through it before it would run out of Heat Wave PP. I don't know if it was actually at risk of running out of Heat Wave PP, but that burn certainly did speed things up. And then final game, we saw Aaron versus Sierra, but we actually did not see it yet. That one will be debuting, I want to say, on Sunday, from what I heard in the coach chat, was that Aaron will double upload on Sunday, or upload one extra long video. So all the Aaron Cybertron saying enjoyers out there will get a nice feature-length Sunday from him. But yeah, can't really comment on the game that has not been played yet. Pick'ems were still well above 500. We had a nice 6-3 week, which is right at that 66% that we want to get to, but we're still a little bit below the 66% season average. And you know, this week kind of has a little bit of extra weight just because there's 11 games effectively, because we're counting this. I totally typoed as well. It's not 24 and 17, it's 24 and 15. Oh my goodness, I am so bad at math. I just have my wins calculated and then was just doing math to get the losses, but evidently my math skills are not great. But yeah, let's get into the pick'ems portion of these matchups, starting with Liv versus Necra. And this is one where I think there's a lot to be said about this matchup, but I think ultimately it's going to come down to two quite bulky offensive style teams. Necra, I really like the top 3 core with that Ogerpon, the Volcarona, and the Suicune. I wanted to shout out Suicune here just because it is quite excellent with like a Calm Mind, Scald, Ice Beam set. I think that does really, really well into Liv's team. You're going to be able to Calm Mind past the Raging Bolt. One thing that I would potentially suggest would be like Calm Mind with a Mental Herbs that like Alolan Ninetales can't Encore you. And then even then, Encore is a bit rough even after the first one, but just really being able to avoid that first Encore will be massive, and also using some Follow Me and Rage Powder support will be quite nice. You could also see something similar with the Volcarona, but I think that Volcarona kind of needs to Terra here, whereas Suicune doesn't, which is why I kind of had the edge on Suicune. And also the Ogerpon Rock looks great into Torn, into Volcanion, into Ninetales. Garchomp will probably slow down, as will Raging Bolt, but I think it still does look like a great Mon. And then you can potentially think about screens from Klefki. You could think about potentially a Revival Blessing strategy with Pawmot, or even just like some Zarude bulk up shenanigans. I think Necra can position a lot of setup quite well into Liv's team. But on Liv's side, I really do like this Raging Bolt. I mean, look at the Thunder, like, not Thunder, but look at the Electric type moves into most things that aren't Hisui and Gudra. Man, I could have shouted out the Hisui and Gudra too, actually, looking back at it. Maybe I should have, in hindsight. That Mon looks absolutely insane, just chewing the top 4 and threatening Garchomp with a Dragon Pulse, potentially. Like, if it Terras the Gudra with, like, an Assault Vest set, and then you go, like, Terra Bug or something, or Terra Grass, like, once the Volcanian's worn down and such, that could be a nice win con. But I really do like Raging Bolt here. Electric moves look quite good, as does Draco Meteor. I think just like a standard Assault Vest set does look like it will chew hits quite well here. And you could even think about something like Terra Ground or Terra Fighting. My better guess would be Terra Fighting might actually be quite valid here, so that you can like get that solid Terra Blast onto Gudra. And Fighting does not look like such a bad defensive type here overall, I would say. So I think that Liv has a lot of tools. Just because I think Necro's kind of forced into a more setup game plan, so I think something like Encore Alola Ninetales could be quite pivotal here, Encore Tinkaton. I'm just very Encore pilled right now, but I think ultimately that will be a great way for Liv to go about this game, and why I do favor Liv in this matchup. Up next, we see Seabad versus Mountay. Seabad, after a nice win, Mountay looking to get back into the win streak after losing his first game. I think this is going to kind of end up as a bit of a weather war game, with Illumise acting as the sun setter, and obviously Pelipper acting as our rain setter. That being said, I really do think that Fluttermane goes crazy here. Mountay kind of lacks the Fairy Resist. We have Berserker, but like Shadow Ball will blow that up, and otherwise like Terra Fairy, Dazzling Gleams, Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam and Terra Fairy Moonblast look great. I think booster speed, you'll be able to potentially get faster than Basculegion in the rain even, and I think that potentially, Illumise can also help with that, and being able to potentially, get set Sunny Days could be quite nice. You do have to keep in mind like a Choice Band but like a Choice Band potentially Terra Water Aqua Jet. Your Fluttermane is probably pretty close to in range of that in the rain at full health, and the Basculegion Aqua Jet would go before a Prankster Sunny Day if it is in the rain, which is something to note. That being said, Electabuzz support could go quite nicely here. Something like Electroweb looks quite solid into this team. And yeah, I think that there are some tools for Seabad. However, I do really, really like Mount's matchup. And look at the Basculegion here. It looks great. There's one water resist in the Gyarados, and aside from that, there really isn't anything. So I predict like a Choice Band set, because also Last Respect looks really good. Outside of the Greedent, there's no Dark type, so there's no resistance, and there's one immunity that I don't really think has much merit in this matchup. So I do really like Mountay here, just on the back of this Archaludon, and the general rain offense I think looks really good. And I think Overquill is another great shout out potentially on Mountay's side. Just the dark and poison damage looks quite solid into a lot of what Seabad has here. And I think like you don't even really need to like worry about Intimidate. Another thing from Seabad's side that I didn't really mention is Gyarados, but you kind of do need a lot to go your way to get past the Archaludon first. Up next, we see Tone versus Shroomraver. And I'm going to make a prediction here that Shroomraver will get his first win. I know I'm kind of spoiling my prediction before the matchup overview, but I think it's going to be exciting. I think this will be a game to watch. On Tone's side, I really do like this Ogerpon. Look at this matchup for it. It does really great damage into a Mungus and Primarina, and like a Play Rough set can knock down Hydreigon a peg and knock down Noivern. It looks really, really solid here. Something like Incineroar, obviously, you have to worry about, but I think you have sufficient Incineroar counterplay between Tyranitar, Excadrill, Keldeo, that I think it's kind of tough to really pivot around that Incineroar without terraing it. And once you terra it, you kind of lose a lot of the merit as a defensive check to the Ogerpon Hearthflame in particular. So I think that's a great idea for Tone, is kind of put that pressure on the Incineroar and then prosper with this Ogerpon. But on Shroom's side, I really like Primarina here. Look at the damage spread that it has, just like either Hyper Voice, or if you're really feeling it, Pump plus Moonblast or Dazzling Gleam. Looks absolutely great here. You get just like incredible stab damage that'll pick off most of the team other than the Ogerpon, and that's like kind of, yeah, that is kind of a tough threat for you, but something like Terra Dragon potentially looks okay. Or you can just rock out with your base typing if you don't, or if you can force the Ogerpon away, or other strategies like that. And you could also consider Trick Room potentially with the Oranguru plus Primarina. I think that's another really, really potent strategy here, is just potentially like, I know Kyle was a big fan of those symbiosis strategies with this team. You could think of like a Throat Spray Primarina and then pass it a Life Orb or something like that, or a Mystic Water. That could be a crazy, crazy Primarina. But yeah, I do really like Shroom here. I think the top three does do enough bulking out of Kyle's or of Tone's team, where I predict Shroom Raver to have this one. Up next, we see OG Albina versus Shuckle King, and this is a pretty interesting matchup. I think both of these teams do skew quite offensively, and it's a bit interesting just because Shuckle kind of has some decent checks for a lot of Owen's offense, but Owen is kind of able to overload. That's kind of, you know, a strength I think of Owen's team is the overloading potential, but on Owen's side, I really do like Azumarill here for its ability to kind of wall out potentially the Urshifu Rapid Strike. With the strong play rough, it'll be able to knock it down, and then, you know, Aqua Jet to potentially pick off a lower HP Talonflame. I think that this looks great for the Azu. I think Thunderous is another great pick here, potentially with like a Terra Blast set. I think like Terra Flying looks pretty potent. Being able to click Terra Blast on pretty much all of Shuckle's team, and then walling out the Zapdos still with your Volt Absorb, so you don't really have to worry about that stab option, and being able to just kind of output crazy damage. I think that's a great strategy from Owen. And obviously you still have Pow Knight, which looks admittedly quite solid, just like extreme speed. You just have to kind of be wary of like Sinistra being able to redirect that, but and then obviously Urshifu walling out stabs on the Chien-Pao. And on Shuckle's side, I really do like Landorus here. I know you're looking at it and you're like, Chien-Pao, Dragonite, you pick Landorus? And with the Azumarill, but I think Terra Landorus looks incredible, especially like Terra Steel. I think Terra Steel can, you know, output incredible damage. You have to be wary with the Intimidate of Ogerpon potentially giving that a Defiant boost, but something that I think could be really interesting is like a Mirror Herb Landorus, so that even in your worst case, you're still winning, and leading that next to a Talonflame potentially, because if you have +2 Landorus and can just immediately get Tailwind, Rock Slide looks incredible here. And other such moves, like, you know, Landorus has like Rock Slide or Earthquake, because, you know, you've got a bunch of flying partners for it. I think those are all great potential ideas. That being said, I do still prefer a lot of what Owen has going on compared to what Shuckle has going on. Up next, we see Joe versus Joey. And this is going to be I believe a slower paced battle is my main prediction for this one. And on Joe's side, I really like the Rillaboom. I really like the fake out potential into like Manaphy and Deoxys, while also having Grassy Glide potential for things like that same Manaphy and Deoxys, and also Sneasel and such. And I really like it kind of being able to output pressure even in the Trick Room. Something that I think could be cool would be like a Grassy Seed Sword Stance set to potentially surprise and ambush Annihilate with a potential like Acrobatics, or even just Wood Hammer and knock off. Those look pretty good as well. Or just like in a standard Assault Vest Fake Out set to kind of also help with Hydrapple, I think looks pretty solid. You have a couple of different routes that you could take with this. That being said, I think, you know, you're also going to have to kind of rely on Gouging Fire potentially. You're going to need a move slot for Iron Head to hit the Deancey, but Steel plus Fire plus, like, you know, Rillaboom support for the Manaphy looks pretty solid here as well. And then Sneasler, Dire Claw potentially. Annihilate does a pretty good job of dissuading a lot of what Sneasler's antics can be, but you could also be like a Grassy Seed Sword Stance set with your Sneasler too, and then get the Unburden to be even faster than Deoxys speed. I think, you know, those are a couple of different potential routes for Joe to take. And then on Joey's side, I really do like Deancey. I like its potential into Gouging Fire. I like its potential into Sneasler, and even into a lot of the special offense on Joe's team, like the Moltres and the Raikou. You're kind of just really worrying about Milotic and Registeel potentially. But getting Diamond Storm boosts off makes this thing quite difficult to kill, I think. And just getting Trick Room up. Yes, Mimikyu can potentially stop your Trick Rooms, but I think other than that, you kind of do play really, really well in this Trick Room option. So I really do like a lot of what Deancey can do here. And but that being said, I really do like a lot of Joe's more balanced options here. And really on the back of that, I do pick Joe to win this one. I think it will be an upset taking Pokeaim's first loss, but I think that Mr. Joe UX9 over here will be able to move firmly into that positive column. Up next, we see James versus Nexus, and I think this is one where James will potentially roll out a more slow game plan, a more methodical game plan, and one that potentially revolves around Glamora. I think that Mortal Spin here looks really, really good, like a Focus Ash Mortal Spin set, just spreading poisons on something like Iron Hands, Porygon 2, Clefable, all super important. You obviously have the Clefable, which is a natural answer to Dondozo because of its Unaware. But like Tinglu, Dondozo, Glamora, Golden Go looks quite solid. And we see that James also made a couple of different transactions. He now has Galarian Zapdos, Screamtail, and Shaman, which I think potentially have merit this game, especially that Screamtail in the sun could be quite annoying, and clicking Encore on a lot of the slower stuff could be mean. That being said, still will be outspeed by Lilligant, so maybe you consider like safety goggles. There's plenty of options. And then also something like Zapdos looks pretty solid into Porygon 2. And other than that, like the flying damage is pretty good. You just have to be wary of Iron Hands, which looks really good. I didn't want to shout out for a third week in a row, so I will just shout out this Lilligant instead. I think offensive Lilligant here looks great. You go something like Chlorophyll, Terra Ground, Close Combat, and Leaf Blade, and Terra Ground, Terra Blast. Then yes, you have to deal with Galarian Zapdos, but that's really the only thing. You could also consider, I think you need to be like Terra Ground or something like that to hit Golden Go. I like Terra Ground because it'll also incidentally pick up Glamora in one. You could also consider Triple Axle over that Close Combat slot to hit Shaman and Galarian Zapdos a little harder. Maybe you want to do that, maybe not. But even with Tailwind from Fletchinder, you'll still be faster than everything bar Screamtail. So I think that's a great option for Nexus to go with. That being said, I do really like James's odds. I think that, he has a lot of skills as a VGC player, and I think, actually, no, never mind. I did write down Nexus in this one. But, talking myself into it, I will say, I really do like James's odds. Just sometimes I'd like to make my predictions beforehand, but sometimes I will just deviate off script, and this is one of those instances where, after talking about it a bit more, I really do like a lot of what James has going for him. I just originally was kind of looking at it more straightforward, but looking at this more like bulky set and also taking into account these transactions a little bit more, I will go ahead and lean James in this one. Up next, we see Clover versus Amel. And this is a great one because I think, we get a couple of players, especially Clover lately has been a lot more interested in prepping the draft stuff. And then Amel, both these guys made transactions this week, I would just also like to point out. But I really do like Brute Bonnet here, as your dark type into the Hoopa matchup. But then also like a very, very potentially bulky Mon with like a booster energy, with like a booster defense looks pretty solid. And you're outputting incredible damage while also threatening great spores. I think that's something that Amel will have to watch out for. He could potentially put like a safety goggles on Indeedee, but you're also just like worried about like crunch and such. So it's a bit challenging. And I also think that, Trick Room looks really, really solid here. Farigiraf looks kind of annoying to take out with like a potential Terra Fairy. But if you do lead Hoopa, it's kind of challenging for Farigiraf to accomplish a lot. And, you could potentially think about like leading Murkrow and going for like a more offensive route with like the Sun. That also might be something interesting. You probably have to do like I don't know necessarily if you can pull that off just like with Blastoise waiting in the wings, but Terra Fire Eruption does look kind of nice from Typhlosion as well. But I think the slow and more, like the Trick Room mode looks a little bit better for Clover. And then on Amel's side, I really like the Shaman Sky here. I think we've gotten a chance to see a lot of what Shaman Sky can do. And this season especially, I think we're going to see a great game from it this week. I think Terra Fairy looks really good. You could consider Terra Flying as well for a little bit more damage. And then like Seed Flare looks nice with Air Slash, Dazzling Gleam. All look like great options. Then you could also consider it as a Tailwind setter. It looks nice. I don't necessarily know if Tailwind's the route that Amel's going to want to go, but I also don't know if Trick Room's the route Amel's going to want to go. It kind of looks like Clover has almost a better Tailwind and almost a better Trick Room than Amel, so it's going to be hard to see because also Amel kind of has to hedge his bets, whereas Clover can harder like commit to one. I think Clover will commit to Trick Room here, and I really like that, but I think Amel just can kind of rumble in both. It's going to be challenging for him to prep it, but I do like a lot of what Amel can do here. I like his damage dealers a lot in this matchup, even more than I like Clover's. So I am going to lean Amel on this one, just I think off the back of Hoopa and Shaman and Okidogi, he will be able to deal enough damage and kind of just be able to play in all the modes that Clover wants to throw at him. So I will lean Amel in this one. Up next, we see Vatsa versus Viz. And Viz is on a super hot streak. Vatsa also coming off of a great win here. That being said, I don't think Viz will let himself get cheesed this week. That's I really like Terrakion from this week. If you look at its dual stabs, they look great. And then you just have to worry about potentially like Terra Dark could be an interesting option for Crown and Dragapult. Obviously, you're weaker to Urshifu, so maybe you think of something else, maybe like a hard to say what exactly he wants to do with the Terra, but Rock plus Fighting looks so great, where you're kind of not too pressed. Whimsicott I like as well, but I don't necessarily think you need to do the whole beat up thing this week. I think that while Viz doesn't have necessarily any great redirection, I still just think Terrakion Raw outputs enough damage where you can focus on doing other things. This is another game where transactions happen, by the way, on that's a side. But yeah, I think that's offense looks great. I think even if you don't use that Terra Dark Terrakion and instead go for like a Hisui and Zoroark mode, covering as Terrakion, it'll hit the two things that kind of beat out Terrakion the best in the Dragapult and Iron Crown. So I think that's another great thing for Vatsa's team in this one. However, I really do like Viz's Trick Room a lot. Yes, Jirachi may be able to stand in the way of it, but outside of that, this Hatterene looks like it goes crazy. I think this is actually a pickup from Viz for this matchup, but the Fairy plus Psychic plus, like a Shadow Ball looks like it can be really, really potent here. You can rely on other Trick Room setters, or you can set it yourself. I think like an Assault Vest set might potentially look really good. You can also like fit Giga Drain for a Gastrodon, which otherwise might be able to take hits. I'm not 100% sure on that. Maybe it just does too much damage, but like a Spadef Gastrodon potentially. I really just like a lot of what Viz can do here in the Trick Room, and I think before the Trick Room goes up, he doesn't even necessarily need it. But like in the Trick Room, Araquanid plus Hatterene I think looks like a great combination. So that's why I do lean towards Viz in this one. Up next, we see Sierra versus Moxie Boosted. This is our penultimate matchup, and in this one, I think it will once again skew back towards the more offensive side of things, and starting with this Chi-Yu, I think that, it is going to be tough to position it with Palafin, but you're always just like next to an Ogerpon. Like Chi-Yu Ogerpon looks great here. You just follow me away the Jet Punch and you're chilling. So just something like Scarf Heatwave looks really challenging for Moxie to deal with. Specs Heatwave, you could potentially consider like a Terra Fairy set so that you can one-tap Como-O, or you just rely on your Psychic. You could just be like a Focus Sash set. There's a lot of great options for this thing, and especially once you're pairing it with Redirection, that's great. Or even you're just using like Indeedee next to it so that like a lot of the priority moves get stopped. I think there's a couple of different ways that you can take this Chi-Yu. And then on Moxie's side, I really do like the Bingle here. Looking at Blizzard, Sierra almost forgot to draft to resist. It's Chi-Yu, but like looking at the Blizzard damage, it looks like it might go nuclear here. So it's really insane. But something like Hail kind of has to be up for it, which then like potentially makes you food for Chi-Yu, just all food for thought. So, and if you have to be either killing Chi-Yu or something for it, you to be able to spam Blizzard. Otherwise, the Chi is just going to threaten to nuke you back in one. And so with that, I do really like Sierra's matchup here. I think that Chi-Yu and Iron Bundle have probably almost equally good offensive matchups, but I think Chi-Yu's is just a little bit better, and I think the supporting cast for it works just a little bit better in this matchup. So I do pick Sierra to pick up her first, potentially second, if the Cybertron game goes well for her. I think that will be another potential win for Sierra. And in our final matchup, we are talking about Cybertron versus Keely. And oh boy, this looks like a great Spectre matchup. There is no normal. There is no dark. Terra Ghost looks really free. Obviously, I think Keely has, like, she is going to bring at least some Terra normal or Terra dark. And I think because of that, the Spectre will maybe be a little bit hampered, but still, I think it looks great. And then also Cybertron's Trick Room mode looks great. Keely doesn't really have a great way to reverse Trick Room. It's just kind of stop it from going up. But just like a physically defensive Cresselia, I think will probably guarantee Trick Room going up turn 1. You probably need to be Mental Herb for Tornadus Taunt, but like unless it's Taunt Torn, Taunt Lando in the same turn or something like that, I think it'll get up pretty freely. And yeah, I don't see a world in which Crest can go down on turn 1. Maybe if it's like Spec, Sylveon, Hyper Beam, Band, Bax, Flavor Rush, obviously it'll go down, but like I think it'll be very tough for you to be able to do that while also, you know, still prepping a functional winning game plan. And I think Enamorus also looks great here. The Fairy Resist is just Arcanine, which, you know, can just get Earth Power, is very liable for that to happen. So I do like a lot of what Cybertron is doing here. That being said, on Keely's side, I think the Bax looks great. Almost equally as great. Just being able to click Ice plus Dragon looks really good. I think probably bring like a loaded dice, maybe Clear Amulet for Tauros. You probably could consider like Terra Ghost to stop that thing from close combating you as well. And maybe even getting a strong Terra Ghost Terra Blast into the Crest. I think that'll be your strongest move to hit it if you are Terra Ghost, but then you're also weaker to Spectre, so kind of hard, but I think that Clear Amulet makes a lot of sense. And I think Ice Shard also has a lot of good utility into Ursaluna, so I think that this Excalibur looks great, but I think Aaron still, from the matchup, would be favored here. So yeah, that is my draft notes for this week. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Thank you all for coming halfway through the season with me. And until next time, J Bear out. Peace.